Hello, I'm Alan Parry. I'm author of How to Remove Trauma Response, a memory reconsolidation guidebook for therapists and coaches. And one of the things you'll often see, and I talk about it too, when we're writing about trauma, or we're reading about trauma, and you hear people talk about trauma, is one of the things that people commonly say is that trauma lives in the body. Now, when they say trauma lives in the body, what is it that they actually mean by that? Well, what they mean by that is probably something that you've noticed yourself in life, because I use big T and little t trauma. I kind of define it as any psychological injury, really, which is still getting in the way of life. So when this shows up in the body, what we tend to notice are things like, let's say, for instance, someone goes into a panic attack. So there'll be some sort of cue in the now that might even be quite imperceptible. They might not even notice it consciously, but there'll be something in the now that resembles back then. And then they'll go into a panic attack and they'll feel all these bodily sensations coming up for them. Or it might even be, those times where there's been something that you've wanted to do in life, but it feels more difficult than other things that you've wanted to do in life. So it might be that if you're more socially anxious, it might be mixing with other people, or it might be public speaking, but whatever it happens to be, you'll notice that as you move towards doing that, or think of yourself doing that in the near future, that you'll start getting butterflies and nausea and so on. Or the opposite could happen, and you might shut down and go numb and very withdrawn. So in each of those cases, the body is where it's showing up. Now, the reason why it's showing up in the body, and the reason why trauma therapists talk about trauma living in the body, is what's really happening, and the reason why it shows up in the body is because of the activation of the nervous system. We all have a nervous system that is permanently protecting us. Its job is to protect us. And so should a lion to run in here now, I'd be running away before I even thought about it. So whenever this happens in the body, what it's a sign of is that the nervous system is activating. And the nervous system activates because it is predicting a threat. And so in many ways, like a lot of us, our nervous systems have been learned, have had a history. Our history has taught our nervous systems that it should be very, very threat averse around various things, that some things used to be very threatening, and so it still believes that they are. So it's operating on an outdated prediction. And so when people talk about trauma living in the body, they're really talking about the ability of the nervous system to give us bodily sensations that are uncomfortable in any moment where the nervous system is predicting some sort of threat. And it wants us to be resourced against that threat, which is why the nervous system is responding in that way. And so in many ways, when I think about therapy that overcomes psychological injuries that are still getting in our way today, I kind of view it as our job as therapists and coaches is to help, if you like, reprogram the nervous system. Our job is kind of to update those predictions. So the nervous system goes back to what it's designed to do, which is to respond to here and now threats. And yet what makes change so difficult is that the nervous system activates and throws up all of these uncomfortable feelings to try and stop us doing something that would once have had threat, but doesn't have threat anymore. And so this is why in this month's deep dive inside the Trauma Removal Club, which is our kind of entry-level, low-price membership for therapists and coaches, the deep dive that I've chosen this month is to look exactly about the nervous system. And so I look at the core model of trauma removal. We go through a map of the nervous system according to polyvagal theory and others. And then finally, we look at how the nervous system actually shapes the story that we tell ourselves, how in a very stressed state, we'll tell a different story about the situation than when we're feeling calm. So this is what we mean by trauma living in the body. It's through the nervous system. Our job as therapists and coaches is to neutralize old historic nervous system responses that are no longer objectively true. And so our job really is to work directly with the nervous system in order to update those predictions. Now, if you want to dive deep on that, then join us in the Trauma Removal Club. That training will be there for, I think, until early March. So come along and have a look at that. Like I say, it's our membership, very low price as well. It's our entry level for therapists and coaches who want to learn about memory reconsolidation and who want to implement this really transformational work. So I hope that's been useful in and of itself anyway, just to give you that sense of when therapists say that trauma lives in the body, what's the mechanism for that? And it's the nervous system. And so by soothing the nervous system, but permanently, we can transform lives. So thanks for listening, and I'll see you soon.